Hello everyone, welcome to Hydra tutorial number 6. And if you remember the last video, we went through all these functions. I'll put again the link to this Hydra functions page, which also is called Hydra API. Basically, we went through source, geometry, color, blend, not blend yet. So source, geometry, color, these three different families of functions in the previous videos, and I left two categories. In here you see more functions, but that's kind of subcategory, I would say, like not the mainstream ones. The ones that are important to cover is there are these 5 categories: source, geometry, color, which we did, and in the next videos we're going to talk about blend and modulate. They're quite tricky. We're going to start with blend. I think it will be 2 videos about blending, because blending itself is quite like not intuitive in some ways. Modulate is like another whole different world, but I strongly recommend to go through until modulate, so that you can unlock all this like fun part of Hydra, which already is fun, I know, but it's going to be like even more fun if you can use these blending and modulating functions. So what is blending? So, okay, I'm going to just like recap a little bit with what we've been doing. I think, okay, so I have to switch the camera to this. Hello, it's tiny me, but I'm still here, and what we have been doing is, okay, so let's just use the camera. Of course, if you don't remember, you can just copy and paste, or you just like check the functions, Hydra functions page. But it will be better to, eventually remember all these like small functions, so you don't have to like look here and there while you're coding, so you can be more fluent. So what we have been doing is, like, for example, color, and then I just want to have like a red color filter, and also like, I don't know, geometry functions like scroll, X. The second parameter is the movement. So these things that always, like, I kind of talked about this analogy of sandwich or metaphor, that is like source. Well, this is explicitly source, but like, for example, like if you have OSC function, and well, I can do the same thing like here, right? So if I do OSC, well, scroll X is probably not the most interesting one, but I can do like rotate, and it makes the rotation. But always this OSC, source, Voronoi, noise, and so on, which are in the source category, comes first, and then we wrap it up with out, which is kind of the other side of the bun or bread or whatever. And then we chain things. We can put many things. We can make a super tall sandwich here with color and geometry and so on. But in Hydra, we can also use these blending functions, or modulate is also similar category, in the sense that we can put another sandwich inside the sandwich. So it's a little bit like Big Mac, because Big Mac has another bread in between, right? So it's not like a double sandwich, but it's a Big Mac kind of situation. Okay, so what I mean is that maybe it's even more confusing. I start to like talk about these different metaphors. So, okay, so now I'm rotating here. But then what if I want to say like, well, think about like if you use like Photoshop or GIMP, or any, or it can be Illustrator, any kind of like graphic software. On the side, you always have this like layers, and there are different ways of like layering. One is like alpha, like transparency, so that it just like slaps on top of each other. Or it can be like an additive filter, subtractive filter, I don't know what it's called, or multiply. So basically what we want to achieve, or what Hydra does with blending, is doing the same thing, operation, as these additive or subtractive, multiplication, like layers. And if you think about these layers, they're like kind of separate sources. So the way we can see is like there are separate sources. So for example, like I have, okay, just keep it like super simple. So I have my webcam here, webcam input, and I want to slap something on top of it. For example, what if I want to add OSC? So because this is another source, so now we're talking, like we always had one source and one output, but now we're talking about two different sources. So let's see how it goes. So in Hydra functions, you can always come back here and blend. Well, fortunately, the first one is add. So let's try with add. So what we do with add is that so far we only had numbers in here. I mean, we could use kind of functions, but basically most of them are like numbers, but add takes another source instead of numbers. So for example, OSC, and this time we don't put out. So it's kind of like half sandwich. So it's actually exactly look like Big Mac in a way that OSC and no output. So because it never like made sense if we just do this or like this. I mean, it is valid, so there is no error, but you can still run it, but nothing happens. In the case of add, we do OSC without out, but after, because now, you know, we're kind of like skipping this part. Just if we ignore this, then we still need out here. I know it's confusing, but okay, let's just execute this. So it's quite intuitive that we're basically adding these colors in the RGB space so that the brighter ones are added and become brighter, darker ones in OSC, for example, the stripes are like composed with white and black and all these gradients in between. So black parts doesn't really do anything because they are like 0 intensity. So you can still see in between, or like if you make it like thresh, then it's much clearer so that it's basically like slapping this white bars on top of myself. And the rest between white ones, there are black colors. I mean, you know this, right? So if we just do OSC thresh, and I'm not going to go crazy about this time, but or even like, you know, maybe it's easier to see it like static. And if I do the same thing here, you see that, so these white, I don't know, the white bars are slapped on top of my webcam image. And I already did thresh. So what happens here is that you have the source, you can also change these color, geometry, everything. So if I want to do like rotate, and again, I'm going to just keep it static so that it's not crazy. Well, default is 0, the movement, so this is okay. The width changed, which is quite interesting. But anyways, the idea is that now I can add different things here and make it super long, and it's still valid. If you want to make it longer and longer, I suggest like, because if we start like add more and more functions, it will be like super long sentence or line. So the convention is that you make a new line, like line break here, so it looks nice, nice and clean, so that we kind of make it explicit that source, add, OSC, thresh, rotate, blah, 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 and that goes to the output. And of course, you know, if this line gets longer and longer, you can also make a line break. For example, like before dot, like anything is actually quite fine unless you break these words then, or numbers, then that's going to be a bit of a problem. But if it's like between these symbols, if it's actually okay like to break it here, but the convention is like to break the lines at before the dot, because it's kind of like, it kind of signifies that it's connected like from the before this line. I think this still works, right? Yeah. But yeah, this is a convention, and some people like prefer to keep like one function in each line, so it can be even like this, for example. I mean, this feels a little bit too much, but you know, you will find it. Like again, it's about finding what would work for you. I mean, I can present, you know, different options, how I would do it, but also I see this person or other people doing this kind of convention. But there is no like one set of rules. In programming, there are like different conventions depending on the language, depending on the community. And what's important in the case of Hydra is that you are the artist, and either you are making images, and if you want to publish it online, or if you want to do it on the spot as a live coding like VJ, then actually it's more crucial, like you have this convention, so that the reason why I'm talking about this is that you don't want to miss, like, if you make super like spaghetti code, which sometimes I do, and then sometimes like now the crucial thing is that if the code gets longer and longer, it's hard to spot the error. So for example, like here, like already these parentheses are nested, so you might think that this is correct because so far we always had this parenthesis end and dot, parenthesis end and dot. So why not this would work? And then of course this gives an error because the rule is not to have parenthesis dot, but this whole chunk here belongs to what's inside add. So it's like nested, and we want to have two parentheses. And of course, maybe it's too early to say it, but you can also nest inside the nest. So you can have add here, and you can have noise here. I'll do it static. So this is also valid. I froze because of the computer, but okay, now it's there, and this is valid code. And then now we have like 3 parentheses ending and dot out. This is still, I would say, straightforward code, because you can have like one nested, like one add, and then another add, and then another add with add. This can get like really crazy. But let's keep it to simple example here. And for example, like if you have somehow like error, it says missing parenthesis ending after argument list, this is actually quite friendly error. Some errors are very cryptic, but this is quite straightforward, that you are missing one ending, but they will not tell you where, because it also depends. You can actually, I'm adding it here, but you can add it here as well. Sorry for making it confusing, but I'm just telling you because you might come across these like weird errors at some point. So just saying, and it might be helpful for you in the future. Anyways, so okay, let's just like keep it simple for now, something like this, so that I'm saying that I have a source, adding OSC and out. What might be very helpful also to inject here is that I always use the color as a simple example, but for example, I put color 100, which means that to preserve red channel, but other ones are filtered out. So again, like what I just showed in the beginning, it will be like a red color filter. Although I added here, but if I put it here, it will give different result, because I'm only using this color filter to the source image, source webcam image, and then I'm adding OSC. So OSC is not affected by color. Or if I want to add it here, inside add, so it's not the end, but it's inside add, then, oh, actually it's super cool. This is super cool. So we're just like, like moving one function around, and it makes completely different results, which is super interesting. What if I do like different color filter here? Then, you get the idea. And I have just, my sweater today is just one color, but with OSC I have the stripes. Maybe I want to rotate it. Sorry, this is like really distraction, but nah, okay, anyways. So you get the idea that, and again, like, I just unconsciously just added, okay, I'm gonna rotate the stripes, the OSC, so I added here, and if I do it here, if that's the case, then I'm the one who's rotated, or if I want to rotate them all together, then I can do it here as well. So it like start to like the positioning of these functions start to like matter, like it's becomes super critical, which also means that you can experiment with, you know, only with this set of function that we have here, we can make different combinations, and that can drastically change the results. So that's like super interesting part. And now we just talked about add, and already got these results, which is like super exciting. And that's what I wanted to share in this part of the tutorial. So I would say let's not go like too crazy about blending, because there are only like these functions, but here I'm going to talk about add. I will skip sub, it's subtraction, but we also have diff, which is a difference. And sub is a tricky one because also when you use sub, it will subtract alpha channel as well. So what happens is that, I'll just briefly talk about it then. So you kind of expect that, you know, it makes kind of like inverted version of this kind of addition, but you will not see anything because it's actually subtracting alpha channel as well. So everything becomes black because we haven't so far talked so much about alpha channel. Okay, we talked about luma, which affects alpha channel, which is crucial when we start to use layers, layer function. But in this case, like because everything is alpha is like 1 in the source image here and OSC as well. So there is something happening, but it becomes completely blank. I'm not sure if there's like way to preserve, maybe like luma? I don't know. Yeah, but it's a little bit tricky. Why does this work? It's very tricky. And I think it's just super confusing. Maybe it's written in Hydra book somewhere. But what I recommend you to try is diff instead, because diff is super easy and this is like super fun, you know, like, yeah, this is super fun. You get it. You can like replace this with like noise or Voronoi or whatever. It's just so much fun. Also, if you make OSC with like, okay, it's like 60, 0.1, 1.5 with color, then it becomes, well, I froze, but here you go. Yes. So it's a lot of fun. You can have, you know, you can combine it with like different functions, just like I did with add, and diff is a lot of fun with this. So I kind of skipped all the way to diff. There is blend and mult. So in the next video, just as a teaser, I will talk about layer and mask, because we need to like take care of like a few things in order to use layer and mask. It's not just like slapping 2 different sources. It's not going to work that way. We have to do some kind of treatment to make them happen. But these add, diff, blend and mult, they are quite simple. So for example, blend. And I forgot about one thing about add, that actually I said add only I didn't say only takes 1 source as input, but it's actually taking 2 different parameters or arguments, which is, the second one is just a number, just like how we were doing before, and the default number is 1. And the way, yeah, so it's just like, you know, color takes 4 different numbers as parameters, add takes 1 source, and 1 number, which is, you might guess, it's the, how do you say, like the intensity, or like how much adding factor do you want to use. So if it's like 1, then, you know, it's just taking the original image of OSC. I'll just stop it for now. No, 0. Okay. It's just like original version of OSC is slapped on top of my image. But if we say like 0.5, it's like less harsh. So it's kind of like making half of the intensity of OSC and putting on my image. And if I say like 2.5, I mean, because I just want to say it's quarter. Or You can also do -1, but then it starts to... Why, actually? I actually don't know why. Maybe it's related to alpha? I'm not sure. No, actually... Okay, there's a mystery. Anyways. And you can also do like more than one, right? So it's kind of, it's like a multiplier, like a factor or like multiplier that's amplifying OSC or suppressing OSC if it's like 0.5. So that's kind of like easy to do. I mean, it's you can do the same thing if you do like 1 and then changing OSC's color by 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. It's the same thing as we did here, or you know, it's the same as 1, 1, 1, which doesn't change anything. But as you can see that, well, in this case we don't need this color. It's kind of like easy way to change the effect, like how much this OSC is contributing to the final image. And also, like, if you're performing, I think it's like super handy, because sometimes you want to have like drastic change that, okay, I want to have kind of transition of the scene, then I can just say it's 0, and then, you know, that's the OSC is gone. And you can do it without actually like, okay, deleting this, because there's, if you're like deleting things on the spot, I mean, I would recommend trying these things, but also like you don't want to like risk, you know, because now I'm filming this, so I might do some stupid things, but also if I'm performing, I might do like even more like stupid things. And then, you know, I might say like, okay, I need to get rid of OSC, so maybe I take this out, this error, because add has to be also deleted. And you can avoid these small mistakes if I just say, okay, I just change this to 0. Easy. So this second parameter of add, that can be useful. And I'm just talking about this because this is super important in blend. So blend, what it does is it's a little bit similar to add, but you can see in the image, this is a little bit like less harsh, I would say, like kind of like grayish. And what else? I don't know. Should I say like Voronoi? Because I haven't used it today. Yeah, like everything looks like kind of less harsh. If I just add source and Voronoi, it becomes quite bright. In the case of like blend, okay, this is kind of like modest, I would say. So what blend does is like, it's a bit like crossfading, and so I just talk about the second parameter of add, but basically it takes the second parameter, and this is like, the default is 0.5. And when I say like crossfade, is like, it goes from 0 to 1. Of course, you can feed any number, but let's not go into that right now. And if you say 0, then it's just like, you know, what we had with add, that doesn't like the Voronoi in this case doesn't contribute to blending. So I'm there. But if we say like 1, it's just Voronoi. And this is also like super like interesting and fun trick if you want to like perform, because with just, you know, one number you can like modulate or change the image like completely. And what happens with 0.5 is that it goes in the middle, so literally like blending source webcam, source image, and Voronoi, and it's kind of like averaging it, and the rest is like weighted average. Whatever, let's not do math. But so like if you say like 0.2, or like if you know like lerp in, I don't know, processing, or yeah, like these functions called lerp, it's basically the same thing, that it kind of like makes the crossfade. So if it's 0.2, it's closer to the webcam image, source S0, but there is, you can actually see this a little bit of like Voronoi in it. And as you increase, the Voronoi start to be more obvious. And I'm just skipping a little bit. And if you go closer to 1, then you can still see my ghost, me as a ghost, but the Voronoi is like more prominent. And that makes it like less harsh effect than the visual effect than add. So I mean, there are pros and cons, and especially like if you're starting to use like feedback, which I hope that we can cover this in the tutorial in a few more episodes later. But this can be like blend can be like super handy if you do like feedback to kind of suppress like harsh effect to kind of keep everything under control. So that's something. So blend, add, they have a little bit different flavor to it, but basically they're working with the two different sources. Diff doesn't have it, by the way. So if you want to like work in some like a similar way, probably you need to use color as I did. So like add color. I think so. I should double check if I go to diff in the document. Yeah, there's just texture. Well, in this case, in the document, this is texture, but that's the source or whatever. Yeah, let's say texture. So if I want this, and the thing with JavaScript, it's not about Hydra, but JavaScript is that if you put the parameter that is not defined in the function, they will not complain. So they're not going to tell you, hey, diff doesn't take two parameters. In some programming language, it's different, but in JavaScript, by the way, it's pretty cool. So kind of really like David how it looks. What I wanted to do is so it doesn't matter if you put second parameter, it will not tell you. So if I think, I mean, this is super cool, but if I want to suppress kind of, the contribution of Voronoi, just like how we did with add or blend, you probably need to do something like this, like DIY it. Not interesting. I know it's like cumbersome because you have to do it 3 times. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is something you want, but you might want to do something like, oh, okay, this is kind of interesting. So there are like slight differences, but if you question like, oh, like Naoto said, add takes 2 parameters, and I'm trying with diff, like why doesn't it work? It's because diff is not designed the same way. It's just how it is. All right, and mult. And the mult takes 2 parameters, texture and, they say amount or factor or contribution or multiplier. Basically, it's the same as like Photoshop multiplying filter or GIMP or whatever. It's not addition, it's not difference, but it's like multiplying 2 pixels. So if one of them has like completely dark area or pixels like this here, like happening right here, it will like completely like suppress the other texture. Maybe OSC is like easier to understand. So is it actually? I don't know. Well, it's like multiplying. So the white part is preserved from the webcam image, but the black part of the OSC is like completely suppressing the image from webcam. I can make it moving or rotating as I did before, but yeah, I think it's quite straightforward. And if this is too harsh, you think the amount or the factor multiplier of multiplier. Okay, so this is confusing. Okay, so this is the amount of mult. You can change it here. Default is 1, so it didn't change anything. But if you say like 0.5, then just like how it was with add, it gets like less harsh. And in this case, actually, it doesn't really, well, okay, it's quite different. But maybe like blend might be like, I mean, they kind of look similar in a way, but they have like, basically the way they calculate in the computer GPU is different. Addition is taking 2 pixels and literally the numbers are added. In blend, it's kind of taking weighted average, or in the case of 0.5, it's just taking average of 2 different pixels. And mult here is taking the multiplication of two different pixels. Although you might wonder like why, because if it's 0 to 255 and 0 to 255, then it will end up with like super big number if we say R is like, I don't know, 100, and another pixels R is 100, then the multiplication, it will be like 10,000. But remember that in Hydra, it's always working between 0 and 1. So if something like 128 in 0 to 255 will end up with like 0.5, and another number will be like 0.1, whatever. And then this multiplication will not exceed the range of 0 to 1. Anyways, so I don't know if I have like, but also like I'm just talking about RGB like separately. So for example, if you're feeding colored OSC, then it will look different. I can make it a bit more obvious, but yeah, now it's like kind of you're looking through color filter, but with like kind of rainbow color filter, let's say. That's quite fun. What else? Yeah, I would say like mult, and the same with diff, right? That well, that's like even more like whoa, but because these RGB are computed separately, it's also like interesting to like experiment with different color functions or like colored sources. Like OSC with color is quite obvious example, but what if I use like gradient, or what if, well, this is super nice. And what if I do like colorama to one of them? It's not so obvious, but yeah. And this is quite different from like how, because this is like now I'm seeing like the different highlights on my face, but if I put like diff and gradient, rotate, whatever, it looks not so obvious. I don't know, but some parts are obvious. I don't know. Anyways, so as you can see, like you can really like experiment, and you don't have to use the webcam image, right? So if you're shy, you don't want to appear on your screen, you can always like try with like, what if I do like OSC and diff with gradient or like noise, whatever. But just like remember that when we talk about these blending functions, it's always like one source or texture, and another texture or source is coming inside the function. Well, in this case, you don't need this. So this is like simple version of, like super simple version of blending, or even I can say like blend. Interesting. So I hope you learned something, and if you have questions, or if you've made something super interesting, please share in the comment down below, or write to me on Mastodon, or join the group on Discord, Facebook, wherever the Hydra group is, or live coding group. There are some things distributed. Also, like there are like, I think I mentioned, like there are like top lab groups in like distributed all over the world that you might find your local group that you want to join, and they might have meetups, performances, and you already have tool to do VJing with Hydra, let's say. So be bold and try things out. Also, if you have wishes, what you want to learn in the next videos that I'm making, thank you for the one who commented. That was really helpful. So please write to me, and I want to make this as interactive as possible. I know the format of YouTube is not very interactive, but I'm reading all the feedback, and I want to make something that's interesting to you, but also like informative enough that I can cover everything about Hydra. Well, I'm not saying everything, but what's there, and what people might overlook often. So I'm trying to like go like step by step and taking more and more time, which is very difficult in like workshop settings that I have like 1 hour or 2 hours to talk about everything, which I cannot talk about everything. So in these videos, I really try to go slow, and it might be, you can also skip some videos, right? And yeah, but that's the philosophy, and I hope that in the next video I will cover layers and then modulation and finally feedback, so you can do lots of things. But again, you already have a lot of tools with the colors and now with the blending geometry. So, and it's really important that you try it out, not just like watching. That wouldn't help so much. It's important that you code and you try it and you share it with others so that you can hear it from others and you can also learn from others. So yeah, so for now, if you like it, like the video, please hit the like button. Also subscribe to my channel if you haven't, and see you in the next video. Bye.